Welcome to Channel Make, your insight to the Australia visa system. G'day everyone, my name is Carl Young, your online YouTube visa consultant. Are you interested about migrating to Australia? Why don't you consider to subscribe to my channel and turn a little bell on the side, so once we have all the updates and news, you'll be the first one getting all the notification. Just like today, that we gotta share some news came out. Now, bear in mind these news articles is not coming from a direct media source of the government resource. Obviously, here you have read the title of this video. It's very interesting, and it's actually coming from last year. I recall early last year from a Australian Parliamentary Committee where they had putting a recommendation to enhance the employment and work visa. Why? Well, because the current policy on the employment sponsor visa is somehow too complex in a way that no employer, no employee or skilled workers is willing or to commit it into getting all these visa procedures. Now that basically dropped down a lot of interest and the cost. I remember I made a video especially on this one. The cost bearing on the employer side is so high that no employer perhaps wouldn't wish to do it before they actually get their skilled worker. They are required to pay a lot of money. Now, so how would this enhancement to be done? Now, this is again, I believe this is also coming from institution and had the direct contact with the Department of Immigration where there are some news start to coming out. Now, I noticed a lot of our fans and viewers already commented in regards to this news came out early this week. Now, yesterday we have received a further news article, so I wanted to share two news articles and I will summarize what I believe and predict in the future for the upcoming work visa. Now, the background here is obviously due to pandemic. The economy is no good. And you might already notice that there's a lot of people already arriving in Australia. You notice that the skilled worker shortage is a factual scenario, and it's a fact in Australia. They need people there, especially after the floods in Queensland and New South Wales. Anyway, let's go into the actual news and let's have a read and digest what they actually meant. So this news came out on Tuesday, the 15th of March. So today is already the 19th or so, a couple of days later. I've been rather busy because 15th of March is usually the end day and expiry day for all the student visa holders. So I've been very busy. Now let's have a read and go through this. The title says Australia should grant temporary visa for all jobs. Well, does that including the cleaners? As long as they get paid over 70,000, report says. So bear in mind, this is not the immigration's policy yet, but it's somehow a trending topic that is certainly going to affect how the policy makers within the government will actually do. So Grattan Institute says that target higher wage migrant will be a better address skill shortage. Now, reason they put 70,000 is obviously we'll notice in Australia there has been years and years that people are talking about the wage and salary has been stagnated under about $53,900. That's too low. We haven't got our wage increase for the last decade or things like that. So I think there's a sign where if they could get their overseas skilled workers wage raised up, then obviously the government could then raise up the wage requirement for the domestic for all the Australians, which the Australian workers will be happy too. Okay, and I think it's fair because 53,900 as a standard has been there for, I don't know, probably 10 years, perhaps 7 years at least. So 70 grand, I think that's fair. Now let's continue to read on this one. Australia should abandon skill shortage list and labor market testing, which I totally agree. If you have gone through with my channel, you'll notice when every time I'm talking about employer sponsored visa, with that labor marketing testing, wow, It's just ridiculous. I mean, what? And a lot of regional employers can't really get that done perfectly to match the criteria. So getting this abandoned is, well, I have two hands, just for this, just pulling for this one. Granting the temporary visa for all job earning more than 70,000. Now, Australian temporary migration system is delivering the worst. Well, I can tell you, because I think 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they actually systematically rejected almost 20,000 employer-related visas. Political views. Anyway, they're looking to get this back. With the employer bring fewer high-skilled workers while those earning as little as $53,900. So that's exactly what we have talked about. The Turnbull government, yes, see, back in 2017, that's exactly what I said. So that's earlier than that. That's where the new visas start to be revamped, but they actually take place about 2018 and 19, where there has been 20,000 plus, probably more, being rejected. Okay, so critic has said, well, critic comes so late. Now today is 2022. They should have done it back in 2019 or 20. Anyhow, it's a still good sign. So every time we go through the downfalls, there's always a rise. So I can see the temporary employment work visa is on the rise, which is good for you and me, for people who want to go there, and for the employer, especially for the Australian employers. Now, it's the employer, the business sector, they cannot find people to work. So for an Australian employer, this is actually a very good sign. Now, temporary migration remains unpopular in Australia, with the labor union complaining, blah, blah, blah. As I said, the low wage of Australia. So if they can raise the skilled overseas workers' wage, they could also raise the domestic local workers' wage as well. So I think this is a good advice and proposal. So work on the visa decline from 110,000 in 2014. See how many of them. Now, bear in mind, back in the old day where there's still 457 visa, there was no cap. Now, no cap means there is no limit. As long as employer needs people to work, you're welcome to get the visa. So back then, a lot of people get 457, and then they cut it into 482, and then they killed almost 20,000 employer-related visa. So as you can see, in 2021, it's only 60,000 left. And the affected families, that's another topic, but because I physically attended to a lot of these clients, so the family being affected is humongous. And back then, I think the age limit was higher. Now they're dropping down to 45, so a lot of people can't even get permanent residency afterwards. So instead of industry, as aged care relying on overseas born workers, tend to employ permanent resident and New Zealander and international students, which are all the numbers is limited in a way, and also the visa is limited. Obviously, for student visas, they can't work full time, but now they can because of the pandemic. Well, sometimes we may want to thank to the COVID. The report noted that half of the temporary skill visa now earn less than typical full-time Australian workers. Well, I don't have that report, but anyway, I think 53,900 has been, as I said, almost 10 years, as I said, mid-2013. So about the time to get it raised up. Employers sponsoring growing number of low-wage workers, and the report argued that practical impossibility to quickly and reliably identify skill shortage in individual occupation. This is exactly correct, because if we wait for the government to identify every single occupation, I can tell you that's gonna be we will wait until 2032 until the Brisbane Olympic. So rather than picking up every single occupation, why not just do a universal change? I think this is a very good idea. Instead, temporary sponsored should be reversed to high wage job. Any occupation targeting higher wage migrants will be better addressed. So the 70,000 threshold some 66%. I'm sorry, 66% of the job will be eligible temporary sponsorship, and up to 44%. So I think this is a very good idea. It suggests that the process had become complicated, both taking exercise and doesn't add much to the local employment, because no government official can assess whether the employer has made genuine attempt. Now, this is very, very true. So what the current system does is that when they especially go into regional employer sponsorship, they rely on the regional council or local council. Now, look, Australia's too big. Even if they rely on the council, the local council, or whichever the entity they rely on, they don't have the time and human resources to travel out there to actually conduct checkings, which is impossible and never had actually been done properly. Anyway, I've got too many stories to actually tell you about this, but it's the past anyway. I'm not gonna raise up too much on this one. So the 70,000 annual wages, I think, is the right way to go, and it suggests number employer-friendly reform. Replace all upfront costs with 1,000 nomination fee, ongoing monthly based on the numbers of workers sponsor. So what they're trying to say is, rather than an upfront, I think for the Skilling Australian Fund, that's thousands and thousands of dollars, sometimes easily go up to $5,000 to $7,000 as per sponsorship upfront. Now, if they can put it into a weekly or a periodically fee required to be paid, depends on the nomination length. I think this is a very good and very practical view. I'm not too sure how government is going to manage that, but I think this is a good idea. So that's basically what they're trying to propose, and I'm good for it. Anyway, now on the 18th, yesterday, another news came out. It's related to the same topic, so let's go through that. So, low-paying migrant dismay over report proposing visa reset targeting high-skilled workers. Migrants have expressed concern about report on the temporary skill shortage, which we are talking about is just the proposed $70,000 dollars. That's what they call the high-skilled workers. But the low-skilled workers is actually not happy about this. Well, if the low-skilled worker can actually get paid $70,000, I think that's good too. Anyway, let's have a read. Now, Xavier's average day work is always been a busy one. So in the cafe, she's 36 years old, arriving from Netherlands. I'm doing 150 meals, blah blah blah. She's one of 1,000 people feeling critical staff gap arose since COVID pandemic temporary skill shortage for a 2 visa. Now, obviously, I believe she's paid just at the standard of $53,900. So about the Grattan Institute's recommendation, these low-skilled workers are being granted with a short visa. So let's go through this. The report released on the week recommend Australia should prioritize high-skilled migrants who can earn $70,000 per year to prevent worker exploitations. Now, what if you cannot get an offer above $70,000? Does that mean they get no visas? No, I don't think that's gonna be the problem, because look, we have seen the reform in South Australia where they access to Dharma program, and the state government step in to assist with the Dharma program to have some jobs that is required to be filled by obviously skilled workers, but with a lower requirement. There should still be a lower requirement there. But you still need to assess it, because you don't want people in Sydney or Melbourne to an employer to actually employ a lot of lower requirement and low pay income people. But do they still get the right to access the pathway to permanent residency? Maybe can, if they can work a little bit longer, probably, rather than the high skill ones. There is always a way to adjust it. You know what I mean? So targeting on a high wage migrant will be better address a general skill shortage, and which is the actual need for Australia as well. But I'm not saying the hospitality and tourism industry doesn't need those ones, but there should be a flexible way to actually deal with this. But the big trend here that we're talking about is basically opening up the traditional, complex, complicated work visa, employment sponsor visa, to a very, very simplified work visa scheme, and ditching out all these labor marketing and all these things out there. I think it's good, because if we compare to those work visa that they issue in USA, it's rather easier than the one that we currently have in Australia. Okay, so there's a lot of conversation here from Xaviera. Okay, I'm sorry, Xaviera. Complaining about the high wage and then she get no opportunity. So I'm not gonna go through these one. I'm gonna go into more detail about how they analyze this. The recommendation would ensure fewer migrants will be exploited. That's correct. One way to go on that one. And one report author Will McKay said that 80% of full-time job in Australia earn more than $53,900. Now that is also correct, but also there are still people complaining about their wage has been stagnant. But anyway, I don't know. There's always two sides. But for visa expert and consultants like me, I'm seeing this as a good news, because you get an easier way to get access to the visa and you get higher pay. Why not? It's good, right? Okay. Now moving through this, so talk about pandemic, which obviously, one way we should also thank the COVID, because the COVID makes the government of Australia do this ultimate change, and these changes are always good for the migrants, as I had predicted 2 years ago, which is very good. A report by Committee on Economic Development of Australia, CEDA SETA, released August 2021, warned that the Australian currently needs 70,000 more aged care workers, and by 2050 we need 400,000 more aged care workers. Well, because the population is getting aged and people have longer lifespan nowadays. And the former Deputy Secretary of Immigration Department echoed those concerns and means these are all the signs showing that Australia needs more workers, and how what we're gonna see the major changes to the employment sponsor visa category. So let's summarize this. Obviously this coordinated news articles actually matches to what the parliamentary committee had done in early 2021, and how I have predicted they are gonna make the work visa much easier. How they're gonna combine the list, or probably just remove the all skill occupation list, perhaps, maybe, I don't know. And how they're gonna raise up the requirement of income, salary. I think this is all the sign in welcoming more migrant into Australia. Obviously, this is not the actual policy and law and regulation yet, but I'm actually very excited to actually see how they put this into design. Now, these articles come out because they already have lawmakers making a design in the back end already. So let's wait and see how the new law will come out. Should you have more question or query, more than welcome to leave a comment right down below. And I see you next video. Goodbye.